Welcome back to episode 3 of West End Talks. We're here, episode 3. I'm back. Robbie did a great job yesterday. I'm sure you'll agree. Slight change to the schedule. Robbie said it was going to be Kirsty McLaren in the next episode, but due to some circumstances, she's not able to come in, but she will be in later in the series, don't worry. We'll get her in and we'll ask her the questions that you've all sent in. But tonight, one episode earlier than planned, we have Ben Cracknell. He is the lighting god of the West End and tours and worldwide. We'll touch on that a bit more. But he's done lighting for shows like Heathers, Rock of Ages, Joseph last summer at the Palladium, Priscilla, Chess in Japan, you name it, he's probably done it. He's also done TV shows and the Olivier's as well, which again we'll touch on a bit. But without further ado, let's welcome Ben Cracknell.
Hi there. Hey.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for talking to me.
No, thanks for joining. It'll be great to learn a bit about the backstage side of things and the lighting, which obviously can very much make or break a show.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I hope so.
Definitely.
I wouldn't want to break it. Let's just say.
No, but it definitely can make it so, without a doubt, because you've obviously got the different feelings and things which we'll reach into, and the different kind of meanings of songs that the lighting obviously can make moods and change moods and stuff. So, no, definitely. But we'll get started the normal way that our West End Talk fans will know. And the first question is the same as every time. It's what got you into lighting and performing apps in general?
Oh, goodness. Well, let me think. Well, it's probably a similar story to lots of people, actually, is that when I was younger, like when I was a kid, my parents took me to see pantomime. So I remember my first experience of theatre was seeing pantomime at the Theatre Royal Stratford East.
Okay.
And I can all I can remember particularly vividly is the comic coming, like lots of magic at the top of the show, and the comic coming on a bicycle and getting off the bike and then whistling, and the bike magically disappeared off into the wings. And I remember at that point I was like, wow, this is incredible, because I'd never, we'd seen stuff on television but never seen live theatre. So I guess that kind of started my interest, and then it sort of continued on in school, in being in the school plays. Really, not really. I didn't start off in the technical side. It was very much, I guess, being a performer and being involved in drama clubs and that kind of thing. So it started there, and it was only really, I guess, when I was in secondary school, one of the biggest things to influence me is that when we were looking at doing work experience, I luckily managed to get work experience at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, where at the time Miss Saigon was playing. And I can remember I went there for a week, and the minute I saw that and seeing kind of this extraordinary sort of huge design show and incredible lighting, it really kind of blew me away. And I think that's what sort of started my journey to wanting to work backstage, I think, or wanting to design shows, to make shows rather than be a performer. I think that was a really sort of big thing for me. And then, this was at the end of what would it have been, secondary school. So I went on. I mean, I wasn't absolutely convinced about lighting necessarily, but I knew I wanted to do something, whether it might have been directing even, perhaps. So I went and did A levels. So I did theatre studies, English literature, psychology, and I think it was then I really started to cement my desire to get involved with lighting design. Certainly, my drama teacher at the time was kind of very accommodating in terms of I was interested in basically playing with lights. So I'd like those productions that we did, as well as things like the drama club at the college. I'd like those shows, and just kind of it was fantastic, because most people were interested in being performers, whereas I was actually really interested in designing. So I had free reign to kind of do what I want and experiment. So it was really, really exciting. So after that, I took a year out. I decided at the end of doing my A-levels, I knew I wanted to study lighting. So I ended up getting a place at Rose Bruford to study lighting design. But before that, I decided I was going to take a year out, because I felt that I just wanted to kind of get a bit more experience. And so I wrote to my local theatre, which was the Cliffs Pavilion in Southend, and they're a receiving house. They take on a lot of these kind of musicals that tour around the country. So I got casual work there, which meant that I was getting involved doing a follow spot, or doing get-ins and get-outs, so putting up the scenery and the lighting. So, I mean, that was fantastic because the sort of shows we had were the likes of Jesus Christ Superstar, the big, really useful group tour. We had Joseph at the time, which had come through, the musical Buddy. There were all these kind of like larger shows. So to me, yeah, absolutely, you know, exciting shows, as well as other pieces of dance, and not necessarily the big razzmatazz shows, but lots of other stuff. Comedians, I remember follow spotting the likes of Harry Hill and Eddie Izzard, and you know, those kind of Ken Dodd doing one-nighters.
I don't envy you there. I've seen Ken Dodd live. I don't envy you doing a full spot for him.
Yeah, when it gets to midnight and you're sort of drifting off on the.
Yes, he did some really long shows. I can remember that.
Yeah, indeed. So that was great. I did all of that in the year out, and made some really good contacts with people who had toured in and out of the theatre. So then I went to Rose Bruford and studied lighting there. But I also needed to make some money, so I wrote to almost every like head of lighting in the West End, and managed to get. It wasn't lighting to begin with. I got a crew job working at the Cambridge Theatre in Covent Garden on Grease at the time, with the show there. So I was working as a stage crew, moving scenery on and off, which was good. It was a foot in the door. And then from there, as luck would have it, I found myself back at Drury Lane and working on the lighting crew for Miss Saigon again. So I was back all these years later.
Full circle.
I know, they couldn't get rid of me. So there I was back and working a follow spot there on the show, as well as working crew on stage. And then college eventually finished, and it kind of continued really a bit of doing lighting design. But at the same time, because I was just starting out and getting occasional jobs, and very much small shows, and you know, lucky if you got paid, but it maybe paid a little bit. So in order to make the money for rent and stuff, I just continued on working as a technician, and got more jobs on certain tours around the UK. I also worked for a lighting company who did a company called PRG, who do a lot of the big television shows. They do theatre stuff, lots of other stuff. And I got involved with a lighting designer called Al Gurdon, who does a lot of the big spectacular shows. So the shows I did with him were the likes of, I did MTV Music Awards, but as a lighting programmer rather than a designer. So you know, programming the lighting computer basically. But we did that. I mean, one awesome thing that I did with him, which was in 2000, and I think it was 2009. So I'm 2007 or 2009, and that was the Eurovision Song Contest out in Moscow.
Wow.
And to get involved with that and to operate the lighting on that was just phenomenal. It was a wonderful experience, and so different, because at the same time I was doing my own lighting design, but in much smaller venues, and then to do this like enormous sort of monolithic show, it was a great contrast. So it was good. It was good because it paid good money, which was cool. And also it's just having the experience of working on that scale.
Yeah.
And then it's over the last sort of 10 years, it's just been a case of more and more lighting designs coming, and having success with that, and getting to the point where I just work as a lighting designer now. And I guess it's occasionally, I think it's a shame really I couldn't go back and do the programming, but there's just not enough time to do it all. So so just getting on and doing the lighting design instead.
Yeah, and then so that's where this company came from. Your own
Cracknell. That's a big light bulb. Yes, indeed. Yeah. Well, I guess that had started. Yeah, that was always the end game, but it was a case of finding a way there, because I think it would be difficult for someone just to come out of drama school and say, you know, ta-da, I'm a lighting designer. I think you do need to cut your teeth, I guess, and learn your craft. But at the same time, certainly I found that working as a technician and working as a lighting programmer, you learn all the different sort of facets to the world of lighting in theatre and, well, in entertainment. So that kind of informs you more as a lighting designer, and means that you just have a broader knowledge is good, because that will help you make sure that when you do design stuff, you're also thinking about some of the practicalities of how it's achieved. Yeah,
that makes sense completely. And I think, as you were saying, it makes sense because it put it into actors' point to views. You're saying about coming out of college and being a lighting designer, it would be the same as you wouldn't necessarily come out of college and automatically get a a leading man or a leading part, you'd have to go into the ensemble and work your way up. Usually, again, some people do, and I'm sure it'll be the same for the lighting side as well.
Yeah, Jack Yarrow, straight out of drama school, into playing Joseph at the Palladium.
Yes, I think that's an exception to the rule, and not many people do that.
No, I think there's a lot to be said for learning one's craft, I think, and taking the time to do that, and not necessarily wanting to like dive off into the deep end immediately. You know, learn those skills so that you can be much more confident and assured by the time you get there. I think it's also a good thing.
Because although Jack did a fantastic job, he didn't have an easy job to do. With no experience in automatically headlining the Palladium. Yes.
Yeah.
We'll touch a bit more on the Palladium later, because obviously that was a big role for you last year. And was it supposed to be again this year? Were you supposed to be again this year?
It was supposed to be this. In fact, yes. I think where are we? I think it was. Yes, it would have been press night last week. Would have been our press night. So yes, but luckily the producers have been able to reschedule it, and it's happening same time next summer. So we get to have another go at it.
Yes, here's hoping we'll go. No, here's hoping it definitely will happen. There'll be no more coronavirus. Thank you very much. We've had enough.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Anyway, we'll move on. And what was your first show that you did? You can talk to a wee bit about shows, but what was the first one?
What was the first show? Well, I guess. Well, as a lighting designer, so let's ignore Guys and Dolls when I was at school, treading the boards. But as a lighting designer, I think probably one of the first professional shows I did would have been a pantomime. In actual fact.
Oh no, it wasn't. Sorry, I had to there.
I don't know. Yes, yes, because part of the experience I had at the Christmas Pavilion meant I met lots of producers and production managers who came through, and at the time I'd worked as crew, and I'd been there and follow spotted the pantomimes in Southend, and had just made these contacts. So there was a point when I was at college where I was still in contact with one of them, and it just so happened that they were looking for someone to design. I can remember what it is as well. It was 2000, Christmas 2000, and it was Aladdin at the Pavilion Theatre in Bournemouth, starring Jeremy Beadle, and that was it. And it was amazing. What's the word? The faith they had in me, I guess, because I'd almost come from nowhere. They, the people knew I'd gone away and I'd done small stuff, but in the grand scheme of things, here we are in a relatively large theatre, and they gave me money to go and play with the lights. So
you went, thank you very much, and you went and did it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I haven't looked back since. And I think that like now, when it comes to pantomime, I mean, I'm well into the 50s in terms of the number I've done over the years. So we've never looked back.
Wow, into the 50s, and that's only 20 years ago. 2000 was only 20 years ago, but 50 panels.
I know, quite often. I mean, the seasons, it varies. I mean, I'm lined up to do 3 this Christmas. Again, fingers crossed that things happen.
Well, yes.
But in the past, I've kind of gone between, anyway, maybe from doing a couple of pantomimes through to doing 4, and actually once I did 5, which nearly killed me, but I did it and they all opened back to back, one after the other. So you certainly rack up the number of pantos when you do them at that speed.
Certainly, yes. that 5 pantomimes doesn't seem an awful lot of work mentally, like to me who has never done lighting, but obviously that is a lot of work, because you've got the full show that you'll have to do lighting for, and
exactly. There's a lot of late nights creating it, and being in technical rehearsals for 5 solid weeks is an awful lot, because quite often the rest of the year, I mean, you don't necessarily have productions jam-packed together like that, so you have time to go into the rehearsal room and develop the designs and just have a breather. But because obviously Panto operates within a very sort of tiny window in terms of it happening at Christmas, there is this point from about the middle of November to the middle of December where Kudos alone are opening something in the region of 35 Pantos in those 4 weeks. So yes, they're hectic times, to say the least. I'm always fortunate when I get back. As much as I love doing the pantomime, when it gets to the 19th or 20th of December and I can settle down on the sofa next to the Christmas tree and relax, then I'm very grateful.
It's Christmas now, I can relax.
Yeah, absolutely.
My Christmas is over. I've done my Christmas time.
Yeah, I can go into hibernation.
Yes, I can understand that, yep. So now we'll move on. We hold no responsibility for the next set of questions.
Oh, blimey.
Come from either fans of yours or fans of shows that you have done in the past.
Yeah.
Or shows that you have still to go, because you have one that you've announced recently.
Yeah.
Obviously, Joseph, you've got Joseph next summer, but obviously that wasn't technically supposed to be in the future. But you've obviously got the Drifter Girls coming up as well, which you will be doing as and when it comes into the Gareth.
Indeed, absolutely. I think they're working on dates now for rescheduling it, because again, it was something that was supposed to happen in Newcastle next month. So clearly that's not happening at the moment. So the guys are working on new dates for it.
Oh, so it was a tour, but it was coming into the West End as well.
The way it was going to work was that we were doing an out of town tryout of only a couple of weeks. So so we were going to Newcastle and we were going to put the show up, create it, rehearse it, and do a limited number of performances in Newcastle, and then transfer it down to the West End, to the Garrick Theatre. And the plan is hopefully to do exactly that, but more than likely going to be at some point next year. So
yeah, that'll be next year, I would imagine. The West End's I would think it'll be mostly closed until next year now, unfortunately. I don't think there's much.
It seems that way, but I mean, what I have to say, yes, it does seem that way, but so much stuff. What's encouraging is that people aren't saying that they're cancelling stuff. They're absolutely, producers. We've seen the announcements to do with the likes of Frozen and Cinderella and so forth, that everyone's just kind of rescheduling. So there's hope for the future, which is great news.
Hairspray's done it twice already.
Yeah, absolutely.
They rescheduled to September, now they've rescheduled again to April, so they're determined to go ahead. And obviously,
absolutely. We'll be back.
Joseph, everything that has, I don't think anything actually West End wise has cancelled this year. If it was supposed to be opening, oh, there we go. New dates for the Drifters, Newcastle, 9th to the 23rd of October next year. So it's happening roughly the same time, but next year.
Exactly. So they're moving it a year. So that's great news.
Yeah, so it's still happening, which is great because I want to see Beverly Knight. Anyway, moving on. First question comes from Scott, and he asks, was there anyone that inspired you to be a lighting technician?
Was there anyone who inspired me? Well, I guess, yes, I would say, going back to my work experience on Miss Saigon, I would say it was a chap called David Hersey, who was a prolific lighting designer, one of the sort of early pioneers, because you've got to remember that lighting design actually as an art form is pretty new, in that it was like the 1940s or 50s that things started to happen, but in the kind of the golden era of the big blockbuster West End musicals, so the likes of what David Hersey lit. I mean, he lit the original Les Miserables, he lit Miss Saigon. There's countless productions. Not the original Jesus Christ. Well, actually, I don't know if he lit the original Jesus Christ Superstar, but certainly the one that the first one I saw, which was at the Lyceum, he did that. So I think it was probably his work, and because he just did so much, and it was a lot of the early stuff I saw. So I think as a lighting designer, that person inspired me. But then also, I think at the time when I was doing my A-levels and I was studying theatre studies, I had a tutor, a lovely lady called Tricia Etherton, and she absolutely understood that I was interested in lighting, and she absolutely facilitated that and encouraged me to do that. So I think her as a tutor really kind of gave me that confidence to become a lighting designer.
Great. That's some big names there for inspiration, and people that you worked with so early on. Like David is a name that I knew, and I don't know many lighting designers.
I've never met him, but I've seen an awful lot of his work. But he is a legend, because how much I didn't see it, but I've heard a talk of the Nicholas Nickleby that he did. Again, was an exceptional piece of work. I mean, the list kind of goes on in terms of the work he's done. He's an incredible man. Yeah,
no, definitely. He's great. His name, as I say, I don't know many lighting designers, but he's definitely one that I knew of anyway. Next question, Eve says, what has been your favourite show to work on?
Oh, blimey. Let me think.
We never said it was going to be easy, don't worry.
Well, I can think, because they all have their own things which are great. I mean, I loved Young Frankenstein was a particular treat to work on a few years ago, mainly because of the people involved with it. To to sit in a rehearsal room and work with the likes of Susan Stroman, creating that show, this Broadway Legends, and moreover I mean, I can remember, obviously I'd met Susan Stroman several times, and then we were working together, but come to one of the final rehearsal room runs before we got to the theatre, and I sat down, and then someone said, "Oh, do you mind just moving across?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, fine." And it's because they needed Mel Brooks to go and sit there to watch the run as well. So all of a sudden I was sat here and Mel was sat there, and a real legend, clearly. And I just thought, this is surreal, which was great. And he was fantastic. And the notes he gave sort of to the actors in terms of delivering the show, was so encouraging. Working with him, I think, was great. And the show was so much fun as well. I mean, it's a great musical, Young Frankenstein. So we had a real laugh doing that.
I saw it at the Garrick. Was it a couple of years ago, wasn't it? It was
a couple of years ago. I mean, great for the whole sort of sequence where they bring the monster to life, and we could use loads of pyrotechnics and various lasers and lots of other effects on it. It was as a lighting designer, it was a real treat to create kind of that sort of crazy fantasy. So I think
those kind of shows definitely, I can understand, being great fun. Having the different lights and the flashes and everything must be great. I think the shows that they deserve great light in every show, but I mean, the shows that just need basic lighting must be pretty easy for you, but not easy as in, I don't mean that in a bad way, but there obviously will be shows that are easier.
Some of the different challenges for sure, and I guess you can just with something like Young Frankenstein, there's such sort of range that yes, you've got the kind of the knockabout comedy moments, but then you've got Susan Stroman creating these fantastic Broadway style numbers on stage where you can really sort of get to grips with lighting, the music and the performers, and then you have, as I say, these fantasy moments of bringing Frankenstein's monster to life, which again are a real kind of gift and allow you to really sort of play. Which is not to say that lighting a drama where there aren't lots of effects. They come with their own challenges, I think. I would say lighting a play versus lighting a big musical, but I guess the biggest thing when it comes to musicals is just the quantity, the amount of potential effects of lighting changes in the show. It makes them they're a bigger, more unwieldy beast to deal with.
Yeah, definitely. Clay wants to know, what was the hardest show you've worked on, lighting wise, obviously.
Oh, I know. Actually, I know this one. Actually, thinking about it, I did a production of The Importance of Being Earnest at Birmingham Rep. When was it? A couple of years ago, and it was set in what we call a box set. In that it had a floor, walls down the sides of the stage, and a ceiling over the top, and a back wall, so enclosed. So there's a challenge to begin with, in that the only place you can really put lights is from the front. So you limit, because quite often, you want to have side lights, so coming in from positions in the wings, or top or back light coming in from overhead. So that in itself is a challenge. So whenever I see a set with a ceiling, then immediately I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have to earn my money on this one. But then added to that this box set was made entirely of mirror. So every surface was pure mirror in every single angle. And yes, it was a challenge in terms of getting lighting the performers, but at the same time not trying to kill the audience by them being sort of blinded and light bouncing everywhere. So it became, because it had sort of walls all sloping at different angles, it really was, there was an awful lot of needing to experiment to figure out where to put the lights where we wouldn't just be killing the audience. And we were trying to, because a mirror is going to reflect the light one way or another, but I needed to make sure work out that if the light hit the floor and then bounced from the floor to the back wall and then maybe to the ceiling and off, that maybe it would go onto an auditorium wall or the auditorium ceiling or somewhere that wasn't the audience. So that was really challenging, and we had like a number of previews, and my heart would sink when someone would say, "Oh, I was sitting in seat H12 and I got dazzled at this point," and then someone else I'm in seat A14 and I got dazzled, and so on. So it was it was a real tricky one, that one. We got there in the end, but it was hard work.
I can imagine, yes. It doesn't. I don't think it takes a lighting designer to understand that would be a hard one. Lights and mirrors and everything don't mix.
know. I can remember. I got getting sent. I think I was actually away on holiday somewhere. I can't remember where, but I was on holiday, relaxing, wonderful. And then I got a text message which had a picture of the set, and I think my blood pressure just leapt like there was no tomorrow. And that was the end of
This
that.
was a waste of a holiday.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking, oh my word, how am I going to do that? So it was interesting.
I can imagine. Yes, definitely. Anne asks, what advice would you give to anyone wanting to be in lighting?
What advice to be in lighting? Well, if you are, so I guess if you're coming up in your training, I don't know where you're starting from, but certainly I think what I was saying about gaining experience, if you want to maybe work in lighting, if you're not already, then maybe write to theatres and try to get work on the crew. As I say, a bit like me, where I started just on grease, pushing scenery around, but that gave me an insight into how it worked, and more importantly, gave me the connections to other people who could then say, oh, maybe Ben's available and he can then get the job at Drury Lane doing the spotlight on Miss Saigon. So I think certainly write to theatres to get experience. Obviously, if you want to, we're not making any shows at the moment, but also maybe tweet or look on Instagram or whatever out to lighting designers like me and like drop a message, because maybe you could, maybe if there's a show and there's an opportunity, then you can come in and watch a bit, or at least if nothing more, meet for a coffee to talk about it. But I think but then if you are, say you already are a technician or you're someone who's already getting into lighting, I think one of the biggest influences for me is just seeing theatre, is seeing, I go to the theatre and all, well, I used to back in the day go to the theatre a lot, and fingers crossed I'll be back going soon, but see other people's work, see what's out there, because I think that will help inspire you as a lighting designer as well. So it's a combination, I think, of trying to make connections with people, learn the craft and try to get in and get work experience and practical experience, and equally build up your sort of visual knowledge by seeing as many shows as you can, and equally also go to, the cinema is also helpful in terms of looking at how lighting works, and go to art galleries as well and museums, and just take it all in, because I think all of those things will help you sort of build your toolbox as a lighting designer.
Some good advice, definitely. Another one about advice, but quite a good question. We get this one quite a lot. Matthew's asked, what's one piece of advice you would give to your 16-year-old self?
One piece of advice I would give to don't be precious, I think, is one. And I mean that because it's very daunting when you start lighting a show, in that you sat down, the set designers built the set model, and they've had time in a studio in a non-pressured environment to look at it and to hone what it is. The actors and the dancers have worked in a rehearsal studio, again away from like the glare of the audience. But quite often all these elements come together, and as a lighting designer, they're stopping a technical rehearsal for a moment so you can light a scene. So you have to work very quickly, and it's quite an exposing feeling, because you're literally, everyone's just waiting for you to come up, and you haven't got your rehearsal studio you can hide away in. You're making your work there, and quite often you might slavishly put something together and go, ta-da, what do you think? And someone will say, well, it's not quite what I was imagining. And it's a kind of, certainly when I was starting, it's a horrendous feeling, because then you start to think of, well, I've got it wrong then, I've failed, but you're forgetting the fact you've just made it at that very moment in time. So by not being precious and saying, okay, well, okay, fair enough, then that's not quite what you were thinking, so let's have a conversation then. So what is there any element of what I've done with the lighting here that you like, that I can then we can work with, or is it too cold, or is it too is it there's too much contrast, is it too shadowy, what's wrong? And I think one of the dangers that you could fall into, certainly when you're starting, and I think probably when I was starting, is it, if someone says they're not quite right, is the danger is you suddenly get your back up, and then you sort of shut down and say, well, I think this is what it needs to be. And I think it's about not being precious and saying, fair enough, okay, well, we could potentially knock it all down and get rid of it and start again, or let's find a way together of making the lighting work, because it is a collaboration. So yeah, don't be precious, be brave, to make those decisions. And I mean, it's much better to be looking at a lighting estate that isn't right for the show, and you've identified that, than to be sitting staring at a complete blackout on stage thinking, oh my word, what one am I going to turn on first then? I don't really, so I try, stop worrying about it, just start, get the paintbrushes out and put something up there, and then you can, you can identify if that's the right thing, and if the rest of the team think that's the right thing, and you can grow on it from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely, that's some good advice. And that's kind of touching on the last question. Matt says, if you knew what you knew now, that makes sense. If you knew what you know now at 16, would you still go down the same path?
Oh, absolutely. I love it. It's great. It's a real thrill, I think. I mean, it's not an easy job. The hours are long, and it can be very challenging. But the payoff, I mean, when it goes right, is fantastic, and I love it. So yeah, I'd still be
here. What still sits in my mind is I was there on opening night, not the official. I was there on press night as well, but I was there on the first night of Joseph, and it was there was some things wrong, but nothing to do with the lighting. We'll not go into that.
I can look up my notes. I'm sure there would have been something quite right.
Nothing wrong with the lights. There was some other things wrong, but we'll not go into that. The lighting was just fantastic. It made, like, when you saw it, and it also went dark, and the prison scene. It wasn't the prison, the jail scene. Then you had the colourful scene for the set up. It was just brilliant. And then all the lights.
Yeah, I mean, that Joseph preview was phenomenal. I mean, I think the whole lighting team will always remember that, because it was Joseph, it was a lot of show to do in quite a small amount of time, I would say, and we had with teams of children, and it added complexities, and it was a very pressured rehearsal. There he, and there's Mr. Yarrow giving his best Batman impression. But yes, there was a real payoff, because I think everyone had absolutely sort of busted their guts to get the show on. So the response to that first preview, which we got again and again, which was wonderful, but it was fantastic. And that, actually, going back to the question about would I not be a lighting designer if I knew what I knew? But it's things like that Joseph first preview that are the reason I'm still here, because they can be really awesome when it goes well.
It goes well. It goes really well, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Helen wants to know, is there a show from the past that you wish you had done the lights for?
Is there
not one you've turned down? I don't think it was one now that you haven't done that you wished you had done.
Well, shows I'm just trying to think. Shows from the past. I mean, I just watched recently on Disney Hamilton that's on there at the moment, and as a lighting designer, I mean what Howell Binkley and his team did is incredible. I mean, the lighting is like so integral to that show, in the way it works with the music, and it's so articulate, the way it's just constantly changing and evolving with the music. I hate it. It's brilliant.
I'm going to use that as a clip.
It is phenomenal. I mean, it is really exciting, that lighting. So I think when I think about shows, I say I'd love to do it, but I don't know how I could necessarily better it, because I think it's fantastic. But one of the things I really enjoy as a lighting designer is working with music, and the lighting kind of, I mean, this sounds a bit silly, but the lighting being as articulate as that it feels like it's just part of the orchestration. So it's following the music, and it works with Andy Blankenbuehler. His choreography is sensational in the show, and the lighting really focuses down to a lift and then moves somewhere else, and the whole thing is just so well integrated. So I think that show certainly would be one, in a way, I would have loved to have done, because I think I can imagine that whilst I say it probably was challenging, there's a big payoff, because they did such a fantastic job.
Oh yeah, Hamilton. That was the first time I'd ever seen Hamilton, was when I watched it on Disney Plus. I've never seen it in the Victoria Palace yet. It's about in my price range at the moment, unless I was to win the lottery. Like the Hamilton lottery, not the actual lottery, the Hamilton lottery that they do every performance. So Karen asks quite a kind of open question. Mm-hmm. How do you start thinking about lights for a show? So if you get the show, how do you then, where does the process go? I think this is what she means.
Well, so if I get the show, I mean, I guess I start, assuming that it's something that's written and not a devised performance, then you start with the script and with the music, and just to begin with, to be honest, because so much about lighting is about creating, I guess, the mood, the emotion of the show, that I'm not necessarily interested in the technical stuff to begin with, but just reading the script and then having a chat with maybe the set designer and the director, just to kind of get a feeling of what was your response to it, how did it make you feel, has it got you thinking about anything, and then quite often with the set designer and with a director, it's about building up a language of what is the world that's going to be created. So I mean, the use of lots of imagery is often really helpful. So whether it's like Pinterest, like creating mood boards, and it might be nothing that's tangible as being light at this stage, but what is the environment? Is it going to be a big industrial environment with concrete walls and metal work, or is it more painted cloths? And does it, who knows, is it in the case of Young Frankenstein, where it was a vaudeville style they were going for, so it was very much an idea of footlights and painted cloths with their locations. So I think that's like the early stages, until the point that there's a set model where I can see what this world is going to be, and then it's just a question of, it's difficult to figure out where my ideas come from. A lot of it, I guess, because there's an awful lot of stuff that's reactive. So if I see a set model, then I might just have an instinctive reaction to it in terms of how I'm going to start approaching it. And I guess to a certain extent, this goes back to what I was saying about not necessarily jumping into being a lighting designer when you left college, because the 10 years or so that I spent being a technician and working my way up is also just 10 years of kind of living life. And that sounds kind of a bit silly, but what I mean by that is observing the world around you, because it is an instinctive process, responding to the set and working out how you're going to light it. Observations in real life, like how do you feel on if you wake up and it's a glorious sunny day, for example, and there's crisp shadows and it's bright, that emotionally affects you one way, but then a cloud comes over and it all goes soft and grey, it changes something else. And so is that something you end up influencing your lighting design? Because if you're trying to create this world, what is that? So I think the instinct drives a lot of it, but also just experience of experiencing the world around, and also from seeing all the shows and looking at art and things like that will also help inspire me. I mean, I remember when we did a few years ago when we did Sunset Boulevard, there were video elements in the show, and one of the feelings was that the production numbers wanted to feel a bit like an old movie, and this way that color looks in the old Technicolor films, so it's kind of a bit more saturated, and that sort of influenced it. So I found myself looking at older films and how color was used in that then helped inspire the lighting for that. So there's a fair bit, I think, that of just research that goes into creating the lighting.
Right, so obviously that was great. That obviously gives an insight how to start shows. But you talked about you've done tours of the UK, you've done different theatres in the UK and the West End. But you've not only done that, you're an international lighting designer. Because as we found out when we did Luke's interview, you have done chess in Japan.
I know.
Along with
my only job this year. And there's Luke glowing in white there.
No one there. And yeah, I would pick the wrong one. That one there.
And Ramin over the other side. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that was extra. I've never worked in Japan before, so that was it was really exciting. I have to say, it was fantastic to do that and to work. Nick Winston, who directed and choreographed that, I've done hundreds of shows. I did Rock of Ages, which actually Luke was in again.
Which Luke was in as well, yeah.
With him as well, and The Wedding Singer as well, and as well as when he's choreographed. I remember doing a production Nikolai Foster directed of Merrily We Roll Along at Theatre Clwyd, and Nick choreographed that as well. So yes, we've done quite a lot together.
Yeah, but you went to Japan, and what was that like? Because what are the Japan audiences like compared to the UK?
incredibly reserved. Is what I can. I don't know what I can't remember. I don't know if Luke said, but they're not a kind of a whooping and cheering crowd necessarily. It's all very quiet and orderly. Certainly, if you come to curtain calls, they absolutely respond. But yeah, they're quieter than audiences over here, and certainly sort of audiences in places like the US and in Germany, in actual fact, who are incredibly vocal. So yeah, but it was such a wonderful place. We rehearsed in Tokyo, and that was great, sort of being there in the rehearsals there, and then we traveled across to Osaka where we opened the show. And just nothing to do with lighting, but the fact of getting the bullet train from Tokyo to Osaka, and seeing sort of Mount Fuji in the distance, it was a really fantastic experience, and hopefully one day I can get to go back there. But the whole team were fantastic. The lighting team out there were just first class. They sort of put it together. We didn't have much time to create it, and as you can see in that image, there's quite a lot of lighting there
loads of lights.
Quite a lot of lights, yeah, absolutely. And they did a fantastic job, and it all kind of all worked.
There's lights on the stage as well. There's lights there and.
Oh yeah, we had plenty of lights.
I noticed these ones, but I've never noticed these ones before.
They're everywhere. They're, yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
But it was part of it because it wasn't. We weren't going for necessarily traditional musical theatre staging. It had a concert element. So behind you, there's an LED screen where you can see the guys, and then immediately behind them on the left and right, you can make out there's an orchestra across the very back of the stage. You can and that screen would fly out, and you'd see at moments, you'd see certainly for the chess games, for example, which are kind of big orchestral numbers, you would see all the musicians playing at the back. But at the same time, it had as you can see there, a very kind of rock and roll aesthetic, I guess. Light, a relatively simple set in terms of having those steps and the balconies around the edge, but then the rest of the sort of architecture is sort of created by beams of light and so forth. So and we certainly worked on it very much as a sort of rock and roll event, I guess.
Yeah, because it wasn't the same production that was on, for example, at the Coliseum last 2 summers ago now. It was a slightly different production.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was different. I really enjoyed that. That was Lawrence Connor's version of chess, and that was great because it was Michael Ball, wasn't it? In that
yeah, Michael Ball and Alejandro Barkin, loads of different names.
That was great. And then before that, because this isn't the first production of chess I've ever done. Back in 2010. I lit a touring production of chess, which Craig Revel Horde had directed and choreographed.
Oh, nice.
And that was what was interesting about that one is it was an actor-musician production, so the company played all the music as well. So the ensemble were all the chess pieces, but at the same time a chess piece with the cello and a violin and so forth. So this was obviously a striking contrast to that. So it was nice to have another go, and as I say, just phenomenal to go and work out in Japan. It was great.
I can imagine, yes. And then back in the UK, you did just a small musical. I think I did mention in the intro, touching that on again. I think a few people had seen it. It was a massive success. I don't think anybody wants it to come back. It's actually going on tour. It was supposed to be in tour at the moment, I think, or certainly towards the end of the year. Obviously, we're talking about this musical here. Just a small one called Heathers. I don't think anybody saw it. I'm sure nobody watched it.
Yeah, no one came to see it. Heathers was such a neat. It's great seeing the guys there. It's a neat picture. I mean, you can see what I did there with the yellow one and the red one.
Well, that's why I picked them, because I thought that was brilliant. The lights have actually turned them all yellow and green and red. I loved it.
Cool. There's a sort of button moment at the end of a number. That was it was a fun thing to do. But yeah, Heathers was extraordinary because we did it to begin with at the Other Palace Theatre in Victoria, and if I'm honest with you, I didn't really know when I got asked to design the show. I didn't really know much about Heathers, and I watched the movie, and then I listened to the American cast recording, and it had some fantastic, like Larry O'Keefe's music is just fantastic, like really, really cool, catchy stuff, and so it was really good to know. Really good to do, I should say. But I never expected that reaction. Even on our first day of rehearsals, I recall our director Andy Fickman saying, like, this show is unlike no other, the way the audiences respond to it. And I was like, oh yeah, well, everyone sort of gives that kind of pep talk. But our first night at the Other Palace, the audience literally took the roof off. It was it was like being at a rock show. It was, and the guys who love the show, they come dressed as a Heathers. It's a real experience. It's like I guess the nearest equivalent is something like Rocky Horror in terms of how the audience really sort of participate in the show, and it has such a following. But it was, as I say, phenomenal music, an awesome cast, led by Carrie Hope Fletcher. It was great, and what was wonderful, it had a knockout season at the Other Palace, and then to have another go at it, and to have it at the Haymarket in the West End was awesome. But incredible reactions. I mean, I don't know if you've spoken to anyone involved in the show, but I mean the lines of people at stage door. It was extraordinary. So yeah, we should have done it in May. I think we were supposed to do it, and again, it's another fingers crossed. I know that no one's given up on it. It's just a case of finding dates for it.
Oh, definitely, Paul Taylor Mills has said it's definitely happening.
Oh yeah,
it's definitely happening. Yeah. It's when he just hasn't announced dates yet. But there was supposed to be an announcement the other day, I think. I don't know what the announcement was, but they said, oh no, Monday. There's an announcement on Monday morning. Some sort of announcement on Monday morning. I don't know what that is. So we'll certainly bring that up in our next episode. We'll see whether that.
Yeah. No, it's great. I can't wait to I can't wait to get back and have another go at it, because it is an awful lot of fun. And it's
that's what I was going to ask you. You're doing the tour. You're going to be doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So and I kind of doing it a third time. It's always I enjoy going back to shows and having another go, which is not to say I change it all, but so much when you put on a show and you kind of got a press night or whatever coming up, and you're under pressure that quite often you might overlook a night. Like the idea there you see in that image, that wasn't something we did at the Other Palace. It was something that I realised that was a neat thing to do when we went to the Haymarket, and I added it in, and everyone was like, wow, this looks incredible. And I was like, I don't know why am I such an idiot? Why did I not think of this the first time? It's bizarre, but just coming to something fresh. And there's so many examples, I think, of having that opportunity to go away and just kind of think, and then something clicks and you go, oh great, so who knows what madness I might come up with for the tour. But
I was going to say, it might
be nice to have another go anyway.
Will be, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. I've got to say, I saw it a few times in the Haymarket. I didn't see the Other Palace production, but I did see the Haymarket, and it was phenomenal. It was well worth the hype.
Oh yeah,
many musicals you see and you go, really, this has got hype, but then other ones you like this, you see and you think, okay, that deserved the hype. It definitely deserves. Cast, crew, everything was fantastic. Anyway, moving back on to questions from fans. We've only got a few more to do. You'll be glad to know. Ben wants to know, how do you get a job as a lighting director? Is there auditions, or is it just something you're approached to do?
Nowadays, it's more about being approached to. I don't know. There aren't auditions of such. I think. I mean, I'm in a fortunate position now that I've got a catalogue of work to the point that people can. A lot of people have seen what I've done, but certainly going back to starting out. Some of my first lighting design was because I happened to know a production manager who then got me a job lighting a pantomime. But what that happens is then you do, that's a good job, and you get some, you might get some great pictures, and you can put them on websites or nowadays on social media, and more people, you build momentum like that. So I don't think I've ever really, not so much auditioned. But in saying that, when it came to Young Frankenstein, I kind of did audition to a certain extent, in that the producer wanted me to design the show, but I had to go out to New York and meet Susan Stroman, and I guess have a meeting with her just to think if we could work together. I guess because she didn't know me, she got sent photographs of my work, but just to kind of seal the deal was just to have a chat to make sure we were compatible, and that I kind of understood where she was going with the show, and she felt comfortable that we'd be able to create a show together. So that's one example of that. But quite often work comes on just because of the previous show. I got asked to light Heathers because the producers know me, because it's produced partly by Bill Kenwright, who I'd lit La Cage aux Folles with, for example, and so on. It sort of snowballs, I guess, from job to job.
Yeah. No, that's I think it's word of mouth. Your last job precedes you kind of thing, then more than
I
additions,
think
really.
so, and it's a combination of, say, like meeting Susan Strowman. It's a combination of producing good work, which of course is absolutely what you want, and that's, everyone wants the production to be first class. But it's also about that you are a people person. You're someone who's a collaborator. That people feel, again, when we have this finite amount of time to create a show, that people can trust you and feel safe with you in the room, lighting the show. So it's a combination of, I think, doing good work, and then, as I say, being a compatible person, I guess, and being able to work with people.
So take it, your job as a per show, and obviously not your job, but your job per show, does that end in press night, kind of? No, not end, but assuming that by press night you should be almost finished with the lighting.
Yeah, the lighting is quite what happens with a show, for example, say Joseph or something like that, is that there'll come a point where we lock down the show, where the show that we're presenting, so in previews, the show that we're presenting is the show we're going to present on press night, and quite often that's maybe a few days out from press night. So it just means that there are no further big changes, and the cast can settle in, the crew and the stage management. We know that this is a locked show that we're creating for the press. So I guess creatively at that point, my work finishes, although I don't just pack up and leave, because then it's just a case of checking that everything's neat and tidy and absolutely will run properly. But certainly on delivery of press night, I guess that's when the job of like making the lighting ends. But at the same time, even I get, for every show that I have running, the stage management team produce a show report which says, how the audience reaction was, what went well, what didn't go well, and the bit that I look at is often to do with if there are any technical issues. So, was a follow spot pickup late, so someone started their scene in the dark, or was a piece of equipment failed? So I'll keep an eye on that, and quite often, occasional problems and stuff just get resolved, and it's out of courtesy that I'm informed that these things have happened. But if I see whatever there's a repeating issue, then I'll often step in just to say, can I help? Is there a problem I can resolve, or to give someone a boot up the arse to say sort it out? The latter I don't have to do very often, luckily. But yeah, so I keep tabs on the productions, and then we'll go back. So like a production like Priscilla, Queen of the Desert I designed last autumn. I went to see, one of the last things I did before lockdown was went to visit it up in Newcastle, where it was performing, again just to check up. We'd had some new lighting elements built into the set, so I just needed to go through some cues and make some adjustments. So whenever I've got shows running, then I'm always sort of keeping an eye on quality control and just checking that it's all in tip-top condition.
Yeah, and I take it you're kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I should say a secret shopper. You'll drop in every so often without do you tell them when you're dropping in? Or?
No, I tell them. I think that's cruel to do that. What I am, though, which winds them up, is when it comes to presets, pictures of the pre-show lighting, especially if there's how a front cloth, for example, or a gauze or a set is lit. Quite often those things will crop up on social media, and I'll suddenly see on Twitter, and maybe I don't know. In the case of Joseph, we were lighting the logo very specifically, and if it was a little wonky in a picture, then I might suddenly sort of send a screen grab of that and say, I've just seen this on social media, which is a bit sneaky, but I'll do that. But if I show up to the theatre, then I will let people know, and I'll always go before the show and meet the stage management team and the lighting guys and so on, and just sort of catch up with them, because sometimes it's just good to know what the mood of the company is as well, in terms of is everything fine, we're not having lots of problems with, I don't know, follow spot operators being ill or whatever it might be. So yeah, but I am sneaky though, and I do look on social media for pictures.
I can understand the pictures, yeah, because people do take, well, I like to take pictures of the stage, and seat plan's quite a good one for that. You get to, yeah, because you get to actually, you take a picture from your seat of the stage, and you get money for them. So if you go into seat plan, depends obviously what shows, it varies for what shows. But like if you go into the show and say Garrick, you can click on all the seats and see different pictures of the set.
Well, there we go then.
Before show, this is not during show. because obviously you're not allowed to
Oh
phone out
yeah.
on the show.
Well, I mean, it is so important. Like when the audience walk in, because nowadays and because of social media, everyone takes pictures of
Yeah.
the stage before the show starts, of the presets. That I actually, if I the first cue, I'm notorious for taking ages to create the first lighting cue, the preset cue, and part of the finishing touches is I'll get my phone and take a picture and just go, how does it look? You want it to look right in the room, but equally we want the show to look fantastic on Instagram or whatever. So I do that. I do look at what it looks like taken on an iPhone camera as well, just to balance it up, to make it work in the room, but make it work for that as well, so that the show is represented online as best as it can be as well, and the logo looks good and so on. So
I think everybody needs to do that. I think that's a good piece of advice for any lighting designer, because social media is where things going. Like 100%, phones and social media is just how life goes at the moment. That's just, there'll be another new thing in the show.
So it's important that it looks fantastic. So so looking at a preset, looking at the post set at the end of the show when the audience walk out, to make sure it just it looks absolutely bang on, taken and on a phone camera as well.
No, that makes sense. And a couple more. Jamie wants to know, did Mr. Weber work with you a lot for Joseph, or were you on your own?
He was in. He didn't. I know he liked the lighting, which is good news, but he didn't specifically. I think, as I say, he thought it looked great, but as you would imagine, his interest was on how it sounded more than everything. And I can remember, I wouldn't. Gareth Owen, the sound designer on Joseph, the first preview, he was literally here, and yes, and Andrew was like at the back of the stalls to one side, and there was someone working with him with the copy of the score. And absolutely, I mean, the pressure that poor Gareth must have felt at that moment with Andrew, the guy who created the show, literally 6 feet to one side. But from our point of view, yes, he came in. He was incredibly supportive, and he was incredibly supportive to Gareth as well. But it was, I wouldn't have. I didn't envy being in that position, I think.
No, I can imagine that. Yes, having the guy that created the show, or certainly wrote the script, not the script, the music, or the lyrics. No, the music. Tim Rice was the lyrics, obviously. Certainly, yes, I can imagine having that pressure. But obviously, it was a completely new version of the show. There was a lot of new version, like a lot of new things happened. There was obviously a kind of newer narrator, so she did a lot more than what a narrator normally doesn't do. So there was definitely a lot of different bits to it. So that's obviously gave you some freedom.
Say that again, sorry?
So that obviously gave you a bit of more freedom for a
completely. Show. Absolutely. I mean, it was Lawrence Connor, director, sort of really encouraged me to kind of go for it, really. And I mean, Joseph, it's got the word Technicolor in it for a start. So, I mean, away you go from a lighting design point of view. But I think what was wonderful about Joseph is, because it's a musical comedy, so it's kind of great, it's fun, it's witty. Our production with Sheridan and with the children had its quirks and was cheeky, I guess, the production. But yeah, I mean, they kind of basically said go with it, and it's such great material because you've got a series of these sort of pastiche numbers and different styles. It means that the lighting can follow suit. So you can go for a a country hoedown, and then jump to a solemn sort of Parisian number, very monochromatic with its quirks, and then have an Elvis rock number and so on. So it gives a lot of range for lighting. So we were able to really, really go for it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, definitely it was. I think people compared it to the closest thing to a pantomime without being a pantomime. That's a bad thing. Some people, there was obviously mixed reviews, mostly great reviews, but people did compare it to a pantomime without actually being a pantomime, obviously. I think the audience interaction.
Sheridan as a narrator, because she brought so much comedy and sort of in terms of breaking the fourth wall and speaking out to the audience, I suppose, in a way. I mean, there was, as I say, there was this kind of wit to it, perhaps more than previous versions, just because of how I don't want to talk too much about everything that she did, because there's people who haven't yet seen it. But I mean, yeah, there's lots of fun in the show, isn't there? I think.
Yeah, oh, definitely, 100%. In any production of Joseph you see, but certainly in the Palladium one, there definitely was that added extra comedy and added extra extras, if you like. And obviously, we don't want to spoil it because it obviously depends on who takes over as narrator next year if Sheridan comes back. I know that wasn't the plan this year, but
Yeah, I'm not sure
what the plan is next year. Obviously, with it being postponed, I don't know. All we know is Jason's definitely back and Jack's definitely back. That's all we can say. And obviously, you're back.
Yes.
We
Maybe
know
I'm
that
the narrator. Maybe I didn't know that. I just realised that actually maybe I'm the narrator. Who knows?
I'd love to have a male narrator because it originally was a male, so I would love it to be back to a male. I think people traditionally know it as a female, but it was genuinely originally as a male. It was written as a male part, so you never know what might happen. Anyway, I've missed a question. Sorry. Joe wants to know what's better to do, or what's more fun to do, one-off concerts, TVs, or long-running shows.
Well, I mean, they're all kind of fun. Well, I don't in a long-running show because I do up. I guess if you were a member of the cast, it would be a different thing because, as I say, because come press night, then I'll go away and move on to the next thing and maybe just pop back from time to time. So it's not the same. But I mean, there's a thrill in some of those one-off concerts quite often because it's adrenaline based because you're absolutely you've rehearsed for it, but inevitably you don't have a long like preview period to get it right. When you think about something like the Olivier Awards, it's a fantastic show to do, but we only start putting the setup at the Albert Hall on a Friday, and we're out on television on a Sunday. When you think that I've lit 9 Olivier Awards, but ultimately that's kind of like saying I've lit 9 performances of the Olivier Awards. That's it, because and quite often it's the time is so tight to get those shows on, in that the performing companies on a Sunday will come in and maybe have 15 minutes for each performance, and that's it, and until there's a dress rehearsal in the afternoon, and you might get half an hour as a lighting designer, you'll get half an hour maybe to then do any notes for the entire show, and then you're off and you're on camera. So the adrenaline's sort of through the roof with a show like that to get it right. And also, moreover, because pretty much anyone who's ever going to employ me in the theatre is probably watching that show as well. Yeah. So you want to make sure you get it right as well. So there's a real whilst it's daunting, there's a real thrill to that. And certainly come the end of the show, then if it's all gone well, and fingers crossed for for the last 9 years it has done, there's a huge payoff to that. But so that that's great. But equally, having the pride to say something like Heather's is as successful as it was, or Joseph or whatever, that's also good. So each one's different, but I enjoy them all.
Fantastic. Last question from the fans. If you had to do just one, so that was TV, one-off concerts, or long running, what would it be and why?
I think it would be theatre, so therefore long running shows rather than anything. I think that because that's where I started. That's where I came from. It's what I love. I love the process of making theatre shows. Working with such wonderful creative teams and working in rehearsals, and the time you have to finesse these things. I mean, I enjoy it all, but if I had to choose one, then I'd stick with theatre shows and as you say, like long running shows.
Yeah, kind of longer. Obviously, Joseph was a short run, but it's still a longer than a one-off concert. So yeah, obviously they're kind of things. But that's great. You have survived. You've got to the end of the questions. All that's left is your short. Spit it out there.
Exactly.
All that's left to do is the not so quick fire round. We've got some challenge. We've obviously changed it up a bit for the guys watching at home. Obviously, dream role and dream gender bend role wouldn't work for Ben because he's a lighting designer. He has done a bit of acting, you said, but he's a lighting designer, so it would make no sense to ask him that. But first question for your not so quick fire round is, what would be your dream show that you would light? If you could light any show. Any show.
Well, I think, I don't know. contrary to me saying that I love theatre, I think the idea of lighting one of these kind of big spectacular shows, be it I don't know, an Olympic ceremony or a Eurovision or something like that, something of that scale that gets broadcast around the world. I think maybe something like that I'd love to have a crack at doing one of those sorts of shows.
Yeah, definitely. Manchester's getting the Commonwealth Games soon.
Oh, well, there we go then. I'll have to write my CV and pop that through someone's
Yeah,
letterbox.
definitely. They'll be getting, I think, next. It's not the next one, but it's the next. I don't know. It's soon anyway. They're getting it. I think it's actually this one, the next one, but anyway, it doesn't matter.
Oh, is it?
That's completely irrelevant to the fact, but they're getting it soon. What's your favourite colour of light?
Green.
Oh, an easy question.
The only reason I laugh is because there'll be people who watch this who will laugh. But green, but not like a forest panto green, but sort of those kind of really cool kind of industrial steel, urban, those kind of so like greeny, steely colours.
Right. That makes sense. Yes, we all know that. What's one question we do ask every day? What's your favourite musical theatre song?
Oh crikey! What is my favourite?
The hardest question of the show.
I know. I'm just trying to think what it might be. Oh gosh. I would say "Why God Why" from Miss Saigon.
Oh, that's a good one.
I love it. I remember the first time I heard it, it was fantastic, and it's one of those songs that that sticks with you.
It does, yes. No, that Miss Saigon is just fantastic musical anyway, but yeah, "Why God Why" is a great song. Last question of the night: what is your top 5 shows? Now, you don't have to have lit in them; they're just shows in general.
Okay, let me think. Come From Away, I think.
Yes.
I mean, that blew me away as a show. Miss Saigon, I suppose I should have really because of that. Pippin, I love that.
Yes, that's a good one.
Fantastic, like that Stephen Schwartz music is just beautiful in it. Yeah. What else? I saw it last year in New York, The Prom. That's fantastic.
I haven't seen that yet. I've heard the soundtrack, but I've not seen it.
It's great. It was it's a heartwarming, but it's a hilarious musical. And I think they're doing a version on Netflix or something. I think.
Really?
I believe so. Yeah.
Oh.
We're at 4, aren't we?
4. Yeah, that was for number 4.
West Side Story.
Oh, classic.
West Side Story. I've seen it a few times, but I saw the production which Nikolai Foster did in Leicester last Christmas, and it was just sensational. Yeah. It was really good.
I unfortunately didn't get a chance to go out to Leicester to see it, but yes, I know what one you're talking about. But yes, yeah. I'm looking forward to this Christmas. Hopefully, fingers crossed for the film. Yeah. Hopefully, the film comes out.
Yeah.
Either this Christmas or some point next. So that's us. The last activity we get you to do is the one that got you into us, which is the West End Talks Nominate.
Oh, right, okay.
Obviously, Luke nominated you to get you in. So you can nominate anyone you want. It can be cast, crew, anything from film, TV, or theatre. Somebody you know, because obviously the whole point is to get them in.
Yeah.
And so take it away. You can nominate as many as you want, but one obviously minimum.
1 minimum. Have you had any directors or choreographers yet?
We've had one choreographer, but we've not had a director. I don't think anyway. We've had that many, I can't remember.
Okay. Have you had Nick Winston?
No, we haven't, no.
In that case, Nick Winston, I nominate you to come on this.
That would be fantastic.
In that case, he's fantastic. Obviously, he's part of the gang. We were out doing, as I say, chess at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And previously we've done Rock of Ages and all those other shows. So yeah, Nick, you're up.
Oh, that's good. So what we need you to do then is once you've finished, pop onto Twitter, about like what Luke did with you, and pop up just that you've done your talk, West End Talks. Nick, it's your turn. Tag us both in it.
Oh, great.
So we can both see it. That would be fantastic. I would love to talk to Nick, I've got to say. I've already got questions going, I could ask him this. But that's us. You have made it to the end. Thank you very much for joining us, Ben. All that's left for you guys at home to remember is about the charity. Obviously, we're not just here for fun. I hope Ben did have fun. But we're not just here for fun. We're here to remember we're obviously trying to raise some money much needed funds for Acting for Others, who is a charity that helps all year round the full acting community, not just actors on stage, but obviously lighting design. It helps everybody in the whole of the acting community. So please, anything at all, we do steal Tesco's line here and say every little helps. Put your in the link in the bio below, pop it there, and it'll be anything at all. Fantastic. And join us next time when we will have Alex Ocampia. I hope that's how you pronounce his name. I'm sorry if it's not. Who was in Motown and he's currently in Tina the Musical. So join us then when we'll get him. But Ben, once again, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's been a genuine pleasure. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Bye now.
Bye bye.